Thank you for listening to Discovering the Scriptures with Dr. Peter John Parisis. Currently, we are in Daniel chapter 5, verse 10. Reading first from the King James Bible. Now the queen, by the reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. Unquote. Let's go into prayer. Father, thank you for a wonderful and glorious day. Help us to praise you each and every day in all that you do. Help and protect us. Please give us wisdom and knowledge and help us to understand these verses that we study and meditate upon. Please. And help us to hear the Holy Spirit's teaching. Help us to be obedient. And help us to listen to Jesus and to be more Christ-like. Help us to listen to you and to love you more and spend more time with you in prayer, giving you respect and allowing you to talk with us afterwards as we do now, giving silence afterwards. Please talk with us. In Jesus' name I pray. Thank you. You need more time? Hit your pause button. Okay, now let's go forward and let's look at this now in the Young's Literal Translation, so we can look at another version of it that's worthy to be studied. Quote, the queen, on account of the words of the king and his great men, to the banquet house hath come up. Answered hath the queen and said, O king, to the ages live. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. Unquote. Let's go ahead and parse this in the Aramaic. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came. That's written in a PL stem, casually written, perfect aspect, so complete. Continuing, into the banquet house, and the queen spake. Parse this, PL stem, casually written, aspect, perfect, so complete. Continuing, and said, PL stem, casually written, perfect aspect, so it's complete. Continuing on, and said, O king, live. Parse that, PL stem, casually written, imperative aspect. This is a command or an order. Continuing on, forever, let not thy thoughts trouble thee. Now this is a pual, that's P-U-A-L. It's passive, which means instead of saying he smashed, it's like it was smashed. 7.7% of the verbs are parsed this way. So, trouble thee. And it's an imperfect aspect, which means it's not complete yet. Continuing on. Nor let thy countenance be changed. Let's go ahead and do that. Daniel chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. King James Version, quote, Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Forasmuch as an excellent spirit, and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Unquote. The stem is Ithpael, that's I-T-H-P-A-E-L. And that is a intensive causative, and the aspect is imperfect, which means that it's not complete. Now let's go ahead and continue on, taking a look at this verse to see what can we draw out of it. First, let's go ahead and look at this verse in the context of the paragraph. This paragraph is Daniel 5, verse 10 through verse 12. Now I'm going to read this verse in the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint. Quote, "Then the queen came into the banquet house and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, and let not thy countenance be changed." Unquote. Now remember, the Septuagint, which is the Greek Old Testament, which I just read, is found as old as the 2nd century before Christ in fragments, and the 4th century after Christ is complete. Now why is this important? Well, one of the oldest manuscripts we have is the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that was done about 150 years before Christ to 70 years after Christ, somewhere in the neighborhood. Then we have the Vulgate, which is the early 5th century. We have a complete version in the 8th century. Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew, which is the 10th century. So we have to look at our different versions and find out why are they important to us. Now, we do have older writings, we do have partial writings. We have ancient writings and fragments of the Bible to over 25,000 different copies, but they pretty much are all identical. And as the Dead Sea Scrolls showed with the book of Isaiah, it is identical to what we have today, except for one minor word which had no big deal. So these are important to us, that we go ahead and find out what's going on. Now, the Masoretic text is as old as 100 years after Christ, but the complete copy that we have is the 10th century. So that is what's important about these scrolls and why we want to look at them to find out what is there for us to get meaning from. Now let's go ahead and read John Gill's commentary on this verse. Quote, "Now the queen, by the reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. Not the wife of Belshazzar, as Porphyria would have it, but rather the queen mother, as Jarchias, the widow of El-Merodach, his father, whose name was capital Nitocris, and is spoken of by Herodias as a very prudent woman, and as this seems to be by her words and conduct, though Josephus says it was his grandmother, who had been the wife of Nebuchadnezzar. And of this opinion were some mentioned by Ben Ezra, whose name was Amythias, Amytis, and it appears by what she says afterwards that she was well acquainted with affairs in his time, and being an ancient woman might be the reason why she was not among the ladies at the feast in the banqueting house, but came into it without being sent for, on hearing the consternation and the distress of the king and his lords were in, and the mournful disparaging words they expressed on this occasion. And the queen spake and said, O king, live forever, the usual salutation given to the kings of Babylon and of the eastern monarchs, as we saw in Daniel chapter 2 verse 4. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor thy countenance be changed. As this affair as it could never be understood, and the true meaning of it be given. But be of good cheer, and put on a good countenance. There is hope yet, that it may be cleared up to satisfaction. End of John Gill's commentary on the Bible. So as we see here, she's a queen. Is it a queen? Is it the queen mother? It is the queen grandmother. She has the status of a queen. She has wisdom. She brings forth knowledge to the king at a time that he needs it. God provides. He always provides. He orchestrates things, especially in his children's lives, as I have seen time and time again in my 59 years that I've been alive. Now, what I need for you to do as you listen to this is to go ahead and click on one of the ads that come up. You can go ahead and refresh this screen and go ahead and click on the ad that plays, and then that way I'll get a small portion of the advertisement from the advertiser that pays into it. This way will help support the ministry. Definitely need it, because I am a working minister. Now please tell others about this. Click on the subscribe button below so that you'll be notified about all new videos in the Christian library and the Christian living, how to live clean and proper, how to interpret the Bible yourself. I do the growing things for the garden so that I can show you how you can do it yourself, and of course the Bible. Thank you very much. May God richly bless you as you go on your way.